And this vertical gain, which we see in the metaphors that are applied to psychedelic drugs, consciousness expansion, getting high, psychedelic tripping, shamanic flight, all of these things are being paralleled. It's like the drugs are the feminine, software, formative, leading edge of what is happening. Coming along behind that is the hardware, engineering, masculine mentality that is processing all this stuff into hardware. And this will continue until the leading edge outdistances the engineering mentality through breakthrough. And this is what I think the shamanic hope is, that we can find a way to use chemicals in our bodies and our voices and our thoughts and our hands upon ourselves and each other to transform ourselves without technology, to move into the realm of the imagination on the natch, as it were, with an interiorized, psychopharmacologically applied technology that frees us in the imagination. At the same time that this is going on, the engineering mentality is going to set human societies in orbit around the Earth and the Moon and the near planets. But there's a catch here for the engineering mentality, which is that the very void which surrounds the planet exemplifies this enfolding, abyssal, feminine element. It is the mysterious mama matrix of Finnegan's Wake. The mysterious mama matrix is the universe, and there is no escaping that fact. So that I think the engineering mentality, which will seek to change man into his machines, will have to be counterpoised by the psychedelic, earth-oriented, imagination-oriented side of things, which will create then the potential for the spiritual marriage that will be the alchemical perfection of a new form of humanity. And this is not far away. It can't be far away. It must be now and soon. And it is, as I said, it is a personal responsibility incumbent upon all of us to act. There is definitely an obligation to examine the possibility of action and to think clearly about self and other, language and world, past and future, because too much we have lived in the light of the idea that your ideology will be dictated to you essentially by geography. And if you're born in India, you'll find out that the cosmos is one way. If you're born in Brooklyn, you find out it's another way. What we need to do is transcend these localized grids of fate, which make us what we are but don't want to be, because you claim this higher level of freedom by the simple act of applying attention to being. The experience of being, the primacy of experience. This is why I can get along with these people in the Amazon who do these drugs, because though my Spanish is terrible and often theirs is worse because they're Indians, la experiencia, señor. And yes, we understand, we know. And he says, because we're posing usually as scientists of some sort, you're from this or that university, you will return to this laboratory, you show me this paper which has the name of my friend in it because he helped you last year. But I say to you, experience is the thing. And the only thing you can say to that is, we know it is. We must begin to send out ideological visions rather than be the consumers of them. We need to turn off the metaphorical televisions, which are hooking us in to the network of cultural assumptions dictated from the Pentagon, Madison Avenue, and what have you. We need instead to turn on our terminals and to begin to interact with like-minded people throughout the world and establish this new intellectual order, which will be then the salvation of mankind, I firmly believe, because it is a collectivity, and people will then feel the interrelatedness of their fates, feel that interrelatedness as a thing which transcends national divisions, ideological divisions, feel the primacy of being part of the human family. And I think that it will not be done without psychedelics because we have drifted so long without them. Surely we are the culture that has gone longest without psychedelics in any cultural situation throughout the world. It's been 2,000 years since the mystery was real at Eleusis. And in that 2,000 years, we have wandered far, far into confusion. But we are the prodigal sons. We can redeem the ideal of shamanism from pre-technological social stasis and actually project it, perfect it, and send it out to the stars. And if we don't do this, everything is lost. There is no standing still. There is only risk and commitment to these millennia-long cultural goals that will restore meaning and direction to our civilization, or we will fritter it away into chaos and destruction and the horrors of the typical future scenario. Thank you.
Earlier in your talk, you mentioned the expression gene swarm, and I'm not familiar with it. Could you explain it?
Yes, I talked about this in the workshop this afternoon, pointing out that the notion of species is simply a 17th century convention of biological classification begun by Linnaeus, because when you visually look around with no awareness of geological time, you do seem to see distinct plants and animals. But now that we are aware of such things as bacterial transfer of genes from one organism to another and this sort of thing, we realize that the apparent fixity of the species is an illusion, and that actually there is only a gene swarm on the planet, and it coagulates into centers. The densest kind of center it coagulates into, we call an organism. But it also coagulates into more loosely bound systems, such as symbiotic relationships, or yet more loosely bound relationships, ecotomes and biospheres. And that really there are just, from any given biological center, there is just a series of concentric shells of influence going both directions outward, and that's a more true view of the situation on the planet than the notion that there are distinct species.
So that you would see the actual organisms and all that as being maybe, or the gene swarm expressing itself as an interaction with the environment at that particular moment.
Yes, they're temporary aggregates of genetic material.
I'd never heard that, and I find it very interesting.
Well, it turns out when you start, I don't want to get too deeply into it because it's a sideline, but when you start looking at the ways that genetic material is transferred around, there are all kinds of ways. There's even been a kind of termite found in Africa where the mating activity is so furious that, and the sexual organ of the male insects so sharp that they actually pierce the body cavity, not only of females, but also of other males. And by marking the sperm of these insects and following it, you can discover that some male individuals are transferring sperm to females that is not their sperm. And that absolutely violates the central dogma of Darwinian evolution, which is that the genetic material, the transferability and adaptability of the genetic material is directly linked to the adaptability of its carrier. But here you have a situation where the owner of the sperm may be dead because he was non-adaptive, but the sperm, because it's in the body of a more adaptive insect, is actually having an impact on the expression of the phenotype.
Oh.
So that's very technical, but anyway, genetic material moves around in all kinds of ways, and I'm sure there are more ways soon to be discovered.
Politically speaking, what would be some of the first steps to integrate psychedelics into our culture?
Well, harking back to my notion that the responsibility always rests on us, and that you don't want to go out and immediately form a movement to change those guys or that bureau, I think the thing that should be done is people who are involved in psychedelics should live lives of such exemplitude and impeccability that the notion that there was anything shady or wrong or curious about this phenomenon would be ludicrous. I thought about it. See, I didn't Any other questions? Then thank you very, very, yes.
I have a clearer vision of how you would see a psychedelic society, in that if we were able to demolish a lot of the belief systems that we do operate under, how would we relate to one another? How would you see that vision unfolding?
Okay. Well, there was a French sociologist about 15 years ago who had some vogue and then faded. I don't know what his sin was. But his name was Jacques Ellul, and he wrote a book called The Technological Society. And in there he had an axiom. And the axiom was, there are no political solutions, only technological ones. The rest is propaganda. What a psychedelic society would do, I think, is it would rationally solve problems. The first thing to notice is that we could pave the streets with gold if we would just eliminate defense spending. In other words, our limited energy resources are not being allocated in such a way as to move us towards survival. We have to begin to solve our problems using solutions that are present at hand, no matter who they offend.
So there would be a value system in operation then?
A value system, a humanist value system. It's very interesting that, to me, that the, what do they call it, the silent majority, that the way in which they name their enemies is secular humanists. This is the only intelligent thing they ever say. It's the only intelligent phrase in their entire repertoire, but it's fascinating. We are secular humanists. That's precisely what we are. We believe that human beings are to be the measure of all things, that there is no other standard, not a classless society or God Almighty. There is no other standard but man, humanity, people. And this is a Renaissance ideal. It was first enunciated by Marcello Ficino in 1510. But we have not acted upon it We have not up to this time had a secular humanist society. We've had this curious mix of medieval remnants in the religious department, gangster capitalism in the economic department, stasis-seeking Marxism as a counterpoise to that. We have never rationally tried to solve our problems. And we have never rationally tried to solve our problems on a personal level until the advent of, psychology in the modern sense. People never examined the center. They thought of the center as a mirrored bead, and that you didn't ask questions about the self or motive or the relationship of your worldview to a trauma, expectation, class level. All of these things we have become aware of as we have steadily retreated from the illusion of a world deployed in three-dimensional space. And we're only at the beginning of this process. For instance, I mean, I don't say this to knock Esalen. I say it as an example. I think Esalen is definitely the cutting edge of things and has been for some time. But isn't it preposterous that Esalen operates under the laws of the United States, which make taking these drugs illegal? They must do that. They must do that. They have no choice, whatever their private opinions may be. And all institutions are in that bind. There's no such thing as a revolutionary institution. There are only revolutionary people. And this is why this de-emphasis on belief systems and their support systems, which are institutions, seems to me the essence of this psychedelic message. It says, be against method. Don't be enslaved to method. Embrace anarchy. Anarchy has a bad name because in the political arena, it's a weird number. But in philosophy, in science, in love, and in human relations generally, it seems to me it is the most respectable system based on its track record. Any others?
Yes. Is there any truth Jung's point of view that there has been a certain amount preserved in Tübingen University? He tries to arguments to a secret part of Tübingen University, which was.
Well, this is a game you can play, yes. I mean, his view of it was very correct. There are these lines that can be traced back. Gnosis. I didn't use this word tonight, gnosis, nor did I use the word logos. But this notion of an accessible truth, which is self-evidently true when heard, is very close to the notion of the collectivity of the psychedelic society. My idea is that we could change the logos of the mystery religions from a religious mystery into a social reality. And that would be a social transformation because it would essentially sacralize the secular humanist society that I mentioned. Yeah.
I've been picking up a sort of an urgency of we gotta do it and do it now type of thing as far as shamanism is concerned. I couldn't quite understand why I can't sit back in my stupidity and continue this, practice. Is it because we're coming to man can destroy the world?
No, it may be related to that. We can't know about that. But for sure what it's related to is that your human existence is a unique opportunity.
So it's only the opportunity. There is no great urgency as far as you see. It's not a matter of we got to do it now because we got ourselves into a bind And if we don't get the realization or the knowledge of getting along with
If we don't do it, someone else will. That's my faith. But there's only one game in town, and if you want to be part of the adventure of being, you have to get your feet wet. And that means you have to get committed in some way.
So if it's not done now, it'll be done in 100 years from now.
This is coming. I mean, this wave has been rolling toward completion since before the breakup of Pangea. This is the big picture. Yes, it's coming. The monkeys are going to the stars. Whether smoothly or not so smoothly is not clear. But the monkeys are going to the stars and they're going to take everyone with them. And it can be a relatively smooth birth with no tearing and no bleeding and everything just moving right along. Or it can be holy hell and leave the earth a smoking cinder before it's over with. But the monkey thing, the information creature, is definitely on its way to the stars. I don't think anything can stop that. If you wanted to stop that, you had to get back there before the pyramids. Well, thank you very much.